How's everybody doing? Welcome to the 2:15 session. So hopefully you've had a chance to get some coffee after lunch, and this isn't the session where you're trying to stay awake like I was last session. So, plus this one's just going to be fun because we got all this stuff up here we're going to be talking about. So my name's Scott Rendell. I'm with Microsoft. I'm a I'm a partner solution architect or cloud solution. I know it changes every year, so I don't know what I am. But anyway, really interesting topic today. So this is integrating the Algo IP paging system into Teams. So I would imagine most of you are Teams people. Some of you are probably some voice people. So how many of you have run into a situation where you have to now integrate your Teams deployment with some sort of analog paging? Just by show of hands. Just about everybody. You are in the right place. We will answer that question right here today live. How about that? That's going to be great, right? I am here with Scott Farrell from Algo, and we'll let him introduce himself here in a minute. But before we do that, some housekeeping, okay? Of course, we want to thank our sponsors, right? Can't happen without them. We're very pleased for all the sponsors that are here, and of course, go make sure you go check them out in the sponsor area or the vendor area, whatever they're calling that. From an agenda standpoint, really, Scott's going to take you through most of the Algo stuff, and then we're going to do some live demos, and if we have some time and you have some use cases that we can quickly program or whatever, we'll get a chance to do that. I'll be talking a little bit about the tenant setup. It's actually very easy. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Thanks, Scott. So the two Scotts. My name is Scott Farrell. I'm with Algo Communication Products. We're a Canadian-based company. So for those of you who are not familiar with us, I'll take you through a bit of an introduction of who we are. I'll touch on our product set and how it works, how it functions. We'll look at some of the common use cases that we address with this product set. We'll show you how we manage these devices. So everything is network-based with this device. And of course, compatibility with Teams. So we register natively into Teams via the SIP gateway. So we're the only company that basically can do that for public address. For those of you, that are going to be doing integrations with many of your clients, this is probably the only device you're going to need. This is a $395 device. It provides a balance line output. We've got a couple of them tied into the demo here, so I want to thank Scott for putting that together. So he actually programmed the entire demo himself, brought it with him. We've got some audio codes phones here. We've got poly phones. We've got a 70-volt paging system and some of our newer products. So I'll be taking you through all of that.
I'll take donations for the shipping to get this home, so thanks.
Yeah. Of course, we're going to do the paging integration. So I like walking around. I don't like standing behind a podium. I like looking at my slides when I'm talking. So feel free to interrupt as well if you have questions. So in my role, what I do, I joined Algo 7 years ago. I worked for the telco for many years, so I was a lineman outside climbing poles. I did that for a number of years. Went to work for Nortel Networks, worked in Nortel and design on the Northstar and BCM products. Were very popular, and then of course, with the demise of Nortel, I went over to Avaya. And I think when they went into their second Chapter 11, that's when I decided I was out. So got to know the guys at Algo, introduced their products at Avaya, got to know them quite well. And when I decided to leave 7 years ago, they had a role for me. So what I do is manage strategic accounts throughout North America. So if you ever have any customers, like I work very closely with a lot of people in Microsoft that are doing Teams migrations for companies like DuPont, PepsiCo, you name it. If they're going to Teams, I'll usually get a lot of phone calls, and my team will basically engage with you and help you design that solution to address their requirements. And we're going to give you some overview of what we're capable of doing with the products. So for those of you who are not familiar with Algo, we're a Canadian-based company. The company's been in business for over 50 years. Long history in telephony manufacturing. We used to build products, OEM them for companies. We still do that. The division I represent builds the subset that you see at the bottom here, and of course some of the products that we have on display here. So long history in development on the telephony side, and we've basically evolved to a company that build SIP PoE endpoints that address public address, emergency notifications, door intercom, and so on. So we go to business basically in four pillars, right? So we have a wide variety of speakers, and I'm not going to bore you and talk about all the great things that my speakers. They're speakers, and there's a whole variety of them, and depending on what the use cases that we want to address, we'll make a recommendation on that. We build IP intercoms, so the intercoms are used to, of course, challenge someone at a door, be able to make that call into Teams, verify who the person is, open the door, let them in. The paging adapters, as I said, that's a very popular device. You'll be using those a lot when you're doing these migrations where people are migrating over from premise-based equipment and they still have a legacy 70-volt paging. So for those of you who are familiar with Bogan, your Valcom, your TOAs, I mean, paging's been around for 100 years. So there's a lot of old equipment out there, and we can integrate that into this modern Teams platform for you. And of course, we build visual notification devices. So that device you see over there is the 8410, the one that's saying it's scrolling some text on it right now. That's one of our most recent product launches. It's actually turned out to be the most successful product launch in the history of the company because it's very, very visual. And what's top of mind for a lot of organizations and what you'll be able to bring to them with this product set is the emergency notification capabilities that they're looking for in their environment.
So what's nice about that, Scott, is it's very inclusive, right? So it's not just audible, but it's audible and visual. So if you have people that are hearing impaired or what have you, these things are very bright, they're flashy, they're whatever image you want to put on there based on the particular alert, we'll call it, right? So we've got the strobe here, we've got that. So we're very inclusive when you're dealing with that kind of an environment.
Yeah, so we just did a large deployment in Canada for a hearing impaired institution, and they have 1,100 of the strobes.
1,100?
Yeah, 1,100 strobes. They have over 2,500 endpoints, but the strobes, that strobe, and you'll see it later in the demo, they can do different things, right? They do different patterns, they can do different colors, and depending on what the workflow or the message is, we can do that. And then of course with the visual capability that we have with the new 8410, you'll see that in the demo. We can get into some pretty interesting detail with that product set. So our products, very high-end, industrial grade, okay? Everything connects to the network. They're improved speech intelligibility. We support the wideband G722 codec. We support G711. Secure encryption for communication connectivity. And what's really important and why our product set is so popular is there's no additional software or hardware required. So what you see is what you get. As I'd mentioned, when I'm dealing with somebody that's migrating over to Teams, they may have a big refrigerator in the room driving all their paging equipment. As long as they have an input in that equipment, this device is going to register to your Teams gateway. It's going to connect to the network. It's going to get a DHCP request. It'll get an address. You're going to log into this device. You're going to put it in Teams mode. You're going to register your SIP gateway. You're going to call it. It's going to answer, and you're paging. So you've migrated them over. And this is not an ATA, right? This is basically a SIP device that's providing a balanced line, 600 ohm output. Okay, it emulates a page port off of an old key system or a PBX. All right. Again, high-end quality. Everything we build is PoE powered, so there's no local power required. Now there's PoE plus, there's standard PoE. That new LCD display, it needs more horsepower, so it's PoE plus plus, right? It's looking for 90 watts. It'll operate at 60. But we build a dual-sided version of that as well, which is really interesting. So it perpendicularly mounts in a corridor. So a lot of clients that are looking at getting into this solution set and they're thinking of replacing their old legacy infrastructure, that's a great solution set. They put that in a corridor that you'll hear it later, but it radiates sound in direction either way, 40 feet plus visual. Now you don't need the need for in-ceiling speakers any longer, right? So depending on what you're trying to achieve, you leverage the products to drive that. So portfolio overview. So as I said, we build a wide variety of speakers. You'll notice that there's two speakers on the far right of the slide that are identical to the two that are in column 2 and 3. And what we've done is, in the past, you had to run a PoE drop, home run from your IDF, from your network switch to each device. Cost prohibitive for some people, especially when you're in a common area. If you look in this room, there's 8 speakers in this room. I'd cover it with less with my product, but there's 8 in here. So what we've done, because this is a common area, we've taken our PoE in-ceiling 8188, great standalone speaker, and we've come out with the 8198. And what we've introduced with that, and I don't know if I put that slide, no I didn't, but what we did do with that technology is we've introduced satellite technology. So now you can put in a single PoE plus ceiling speaker, and you can drive up to 3 satellite speakers. So you can then cover that whole hosted area. Like in this room, I'd put, for instance, my host speaker here, and then I can put in 2 satellites to cover this room. It's just a single drop, and then it's an RJ45 patch cable in and out to the speakers.
And these are 98s, right?
That's a 98 right there.
So what we've got here is this one, you can't see it on the back, but it's got dual RJ45 ports, and we're actually PoE to this one, and then we're daisy chain to this one.
Yeah. So the other thing so that reduces the number of direct LAN drops, it reduces the number of data ports, and the satellite speaker is fully supervised off the host, but because it's not a full IP endpoint, it's less than half the cost. So it significantly reduces the cost to implement IP. And we've also done that with our horn speaker. So we do a lot of work in every vertical that you can imagine that has public address, right? We do airports, logistics centers, education's probably our biggest vertical, K-12. We do a ton in the K-12 space, post-secondary. But in logistics centers, manufacturing, the 8186 was a very popular horn speaker. So like AutoZone was one of our customers. They put 200 or 300 of these into a distribution center. In the past, they had to home run everything. When we introduced the 8196, they were able to basically put in a single drop and then drive a number of speakers. What they loved about the 8196 was it's a 16-watt standalone speaker. This is an 8-watt speaker. So for him, he was the director that's in charge of all these AutoZone plants. He was familiar with the 8 watts of output and what he could cover in a plant. So he's limited his deployment to 2 because he has that similar power and experience. So it's a great portfolio, very easy to deploy, as you'll see. It's a web interface for management on all of these devices. And of course, we have single pane options for you when you're getting into large deployments and you have a lot of speakers going into a site. I'll touch on that. We have a premise-based control unit. That blue box that you see at the top right there, that's basically a device that's monitoring all the devices that are in the room that are Algo. And of course, we've introduced a cloud-based solution as well that can monitor up to 10,000 endpoints and multiple sites. So this is the visual device that we build. So the 8410, of course, there's the 8138 that we have on display here as well. We build, another speaker that was designed for the education vertical, and it had a digital clock, integrated call button, strobe lights, and basically this was born out of that. So we, as a company, we listen to you. We listen to our customers. What do you need? What do you want? And we basically will design, and introduce features, that we hear from the field. So what happened was we built this really cool clock speaker that was spec'd out that a school district wanted. They loved it, but then everyone else was like, well, wait a minute, I want a digital clock. I want an analog clock. I want to scroll text. I want to do this. So we basically came out with the LCD display speaker that you see there. We just introduced that last year. We have quite a portfolio that's coming as well. There's a lot of new product that's coming out in the next months. So we build intercoms. We build 4 today. The 2 that we support on Teams are actually the square one that you see here. This is the 8201, the 8028. The video-capable devices that we build are not supported natively into Teams, but you can use a company like CyberTwice, and then you could basically take our 8039 with video, and they'll incorporate that into a Teams environment for you. Go ahead. Well, yes, we are working on a new release. Basically, this one is being redesigned with a new processor that'll support OnVIF. We're actually building a totally new one that's coming out in 2025, and that'll be between the teams to be able to, do SRTPE and be able to pass the video into that environment. It's dependent on Microsoft allowing us to do that too, though, right? Okay. So right now, there's the 2 that we do support are audio only. Okay, so you can basically the 80201, this form factor here, it's a PoE drop. Directly to the device, basically SIP registers into Teams. Somebody walks up, they push the button, sets up 2-way comms. You speak to the person, you push a digit on your phone or on your client, and you can release the door because we have the relay capabilities. We build a 2-piece version of that because when you get into a lot of situations where you're migrating people that have legacy infrastructure, like in the Northstar days, Algo actually built a Northstar digital phone. It was actually emulating one of their proprietary phones, and it could be up to 1,000 feet away, where you can't necessarily get a drop there. You could be at a gate, and they'd have an analog device there. So what we've done is we've built a 2-piece version of this, where you'd have your control unit, looks very similar to this, sits in the IDF, registers on the network, connects to Teams, single pair connection up to 1,000 feet away to the door station. Okay, so it's great for retrofits. Yeah. That's right. That's right. It's a great, yeah, because you're not exposing that. That's right. And the door control is inside as well. It's not exposed to the outside. So these devices, so the adapter that I have right here, this is what I sell a ton of, right? So you've got your customers like DuPont and all these guys that are migrating over, and they have these huge factories. They got these massive paging systems. They basically love this device because it just seamlessly registers into Teams, and it gives them an opportunity to simplify their environment. All that old, analog stuff for basically, signaling time for, your breaks, doing feedback elimination was a separate device. A zone controller was another device. We do all of that in here, right? So this device has a calendaring application, and it has a gig of memory in it. And you'll see in the demo later where we're able to trigger emergency notifications. All kinds of things are embedded in this single device. So it gives an opportunity for the customer to really clean up that closet and get rid of a bunch of old points of failure. So we build 8301. So this one, single, basically you've got somebody's got a Bogan TPU 100 amp, it's a single amp application. You're going to put this device in, you're going to connect it right into the tell-in, and you're done. It's as simple as that. You call the device and you're paging. He's got one set up right here doing that, actually. Then we build the 8373. What that is it's a multi-channel device. So as I said, in these environments, they'll have a lot of old equipment. All we care about is the amplifier and those old speakers that they want to preserve. So what we'll do is we'll eliminate their old zone control capability, and we'll embed it in here, and we do all that high-powered switching. And you'll see why we do that is because we control then all the zoning in multicast. So we can leverage their network and get very dynamic in how we can do zoning. By the way, all the speakers that we have here today, they all do two-way talkback. So if you wanted to be able to put something into a classroom and you want to call that speaker, it'll answer, and you can have two-way comms. In healthcare, it's very popular in operating theaters. They'll have it in an operating theater. Control team can call in. They can talk to the surgeons. Everything's done, hands-free. So every speaker that we build, IP endpoint, has a microphone in it for two-way comms. But the other thing that we do, that's why people love our stuff, right? There's no servers. There's no software. Everything's embedded in the endpoint. That microphone can do ambient noise detection. So right now, everyone's being really nice and quiet. But if there was a lot of angst or noise all of a sudden, our speakers can sense the noise in an environment, and we can dynamically self-amplify. So that's really important when you get into logistics centers and so on and so forth, where it's quiet, or manufacturing, it's quiet in the morning, the equipment spins up. You'll go into those environments where they have old equipment, and you'll see that a lot of the equipment is the speakers, the wire's been cut, there's a rag stuffed in there, it's turned towards the wall because it was too loud, right? So what we do with our product set is we can control all of that audibility based on the noise that we sense in the environment. We do that all automatically. So this device here, the 8301, was a balanced line output. When you get into these environments, you'll see companies like Telcor. They make the Telecenter, Roland. All of these companies, they built these big refrigerators. They were basically analog paging systems, right? They were phone systems. So what we've done is we've built the 8305. So what this will do is this will basically allow you to connect to those systems that are providing you talk battery. That talk battery, a wet pair that was connected into a CO port on their PBX. Well, in the past, the 8301 was limited. But now what we can do is we can then terminate that wet pair on this device, SIP register this, and we can call in, and we can give them that full zone control that they had in the past. Okay? So common use cases. This is what we can do right out of the box. So you can take any one of our devices and basically deploy it on the network, connect it to a PoE, put it in Teams mode. We're going to consume a common area license, and you can register the device, call it, and do paging. Okay? Then this is a very, very common use case right here, where we preserve that legacy asset for the customer. So basically, deploy the 8301, provide the balanced line output. And we have a lot of experience, so feel free to reach out to us. We have a full team on support that will help you. We document a lot of different old amplifiers that are out there, but if you have questions, trust me, I've been on many, many calls with Microsoft and integrators who have no clue what that piece of a refrigerator was. But I've been doing this for almost 40 years. I was a tech, so I can usually provide pretty good guidance on what you're going to need to do. So feel free to reach out to us. We love to engage and help. This is very, very common for us as well, is those feature sets that are embedded there. You wouldn't believe how many organizations have like automated old time clocks and that was tied into doing, and they have to do a sync in the school at midnight every night to get their clock in times. It's crazy. So this supports, of course, network time protocol, NTP. There's a gig of memory on the device, and of course we can support multicast as well. So we can broadcast to many devices. So a lot of people will think, oh, I'm gonna have to register this, it's gonna cost me an arm and a leg. The demo we're gonna do today, it's basically 2 licenses that we consume. But we can push the audio to another 1,000 speakers that know nothing about Teams. And we also, because we support multicast, we have a really good redundancy story too. So if a customer does lose that WAN connectivity and they lose connectivity to Teams, I can still maintain a full paging infrastructure for them because I can do that.
You know what I like about this, Scott, is this is a great scenario for integration. So if you're slowly trying to integrate your existing analog system into the new era, right, of IP, this design right here is your integration path. So you've got your existing.
Oh, sorry, I can go back here. I was going to go, that's a good one to show too.
Yeah, so you've got your existing analog system that you're connecting through the 8301. It's your first version, that's the first device you purchase. And boom, you're in Teams, you're paging now through your existing paging system. Almost everybody in here raised their hands. This would be your entry point, okay? And then as you start to phase out that old analog system, you start adding these speakers via multicast. So even though you're paging one device, you're hitting it through your existing analog system. You're now also, because of multicast, coming out of the 8301 and hitting these, and it's simultaneous. And we're going to demo that here.
Good example would be Fort Lauderdale Airport. I started working with them 5 years ago. 154 QSC amplifiers, 3,000 plus speakers. They had a pretty bad incident there about 8 years ago with a mass shooting. Their paging system did not work properly. They were mandated to fix that. So what did they do? They started looking at how do we put a system in that we can monitor and manage every endpoint, know that it's available and there, and that's where they decided to go with IP. So we've been working with them for about 5 years, and it's very difficult to just go in and do a full rip and replace in an airport. So what we did is, step 1, we front-ended all their amplifiers with the 8301s. It allowed them to normalize their dialing plan, it allowed them to retire a lot of older equipment. And then as they're renovating the airport and they're adding IP, we can tie all that together. And then their end state will eventually be a full IP. So they're up to about 1,700 endpoints in that environment today.
So in this scenario,
Yep.
Team shared device license, you want the Algo 8301.
Yep.
Do you need them to be
No.
Not if you're doing multicast. Now, that's the classroom speaker I was talking about, that 8190S. Now, if you decided, I want to be able to have somebody go up and push that button and make a phone call to an admin group, or if I wanted to call that device, then you're going to need a license on that device to be able to facilitate that. But if you just want to do general paging, single license, you can broadcast and zone anywhere. So emergency notifications is another huge one for us. So basically, we can tie into third-party systems, but in an environment where you have a local area network available to you, you can basically, you can leverage SIP, and we're going to be demonstrating this, so I won't spend that much time. But what's interesting is the relay. So you'll notice there's a button there, the Algo 1202. That's not an IP endpoint. Okay, so all of the speakers and all of the adapters have a relay input in them. We call them workflows, right? So basically, you give me a trigger point, and then I'm going to act upon that. So I'll give you an example. I had a call last week from a poultry farmer. So he has 600,000 hatchlings a week. They have temperature probes that are throughout their facility. They use my horn speakers and other things. He goes, I need to be able to trigger an event so that when I hit a certain temperature threshold, I'm going to trip a relay, and I want the system to call me and tell me that that relay went off in that. Easy for us, right? So they just basically take their temperature probe with their relay, wire it into the speaker. When that basically goes off, the speaker can be SIP registered, it makes a phone call, and it plays a message to them telling them that the probe in barn 1 went off. So we do stuff like that all the time. So the thing is, it can be my accessory or it can be anything. Anything that can provide a logical contact closure to me, we can start a workflow, right? And that's make a SIP call, play a message, do a multicast event. And we also support the RESTful API suite. So you can actually write your own code that'll push post commands to us, and you can trigger a workflow that way.
I actually have a real life case for this, and it may sound stupid, but I have a wood shop, and a lot of times I'm working in the wood shop, working with saws or things that are sharp, and my wife loves to bother me when I'm doing those things. Well, I can't tell you how many times she's scared the living you-know-what out of me while I'm trying to saw, and she's pounding on the door. So I actually went and bought just a contact closure door button, and I hooked it up to the strobe. So when she shows up at the shop, she pushes that, it flashes, I know she's at the door. And I took it one step further. If it's raining and she doesn't want to walk outside, I assigned a phone number to it so she can call it, and it flashes a different color that says, hey, come on inside.
So he's the director of product development and feature sets for us. This is not a residential play for this product set. It's industrial. From a device management perspective, so there's a web interface on every one of the devices, and you can log into the device and you can basically make changes. So we'll be able to do that in real time here. We can do it. The 8300, which is the device that I have here, basically that's an on-site domain, like subnet-specific device. It'll basically go out and find all the Algo devices, up to 350 of them. It'll monitor them, allow you to make changes to them, and be able to push configuration out to multiple devices. And then ADMP, our cloud-based solution, you get into customers like Kohl's, you name it, Walmart. Like they have thousands and thousands and thousands of these. For them to go and buy this doesn't make sense. They don't want to have to manage, hundreds of, IP addresses in an Excel spreadsheet. So the device management platform gives them a view of that entire global solution set.
What I like about the 8300 is that it uses SNMP as its monitoring, but you don't have to set up the traps. It's already done for you. So those of you that are old school SNMP folks, where you had to go set up the traps and the triggers, all of that's taken care of. So it goes out and it just looks for those because the devices are already transmitting SNMP, and that's how it gets its health information right to the 8300. And you can see at a glance what's going on. So if you have a problem, you'll know immediately.
So again, web interface for management on each device. The control unit, there's a snapshot of basically what we have actually hooked up here. If we were to log in, it would look very similar to that. And then, of course, the management platform. The other thing that we offer with this is ZTP, so zero-touch provisioning. So you can basically plug the device. It'll come here. It'll get its config file, and then it'll push it to your configuration server. You can push out a basic config. You can tell it, go register into ADMP and go into Teams mode. And then when you log into the device, it's going to be waiting for a pairing code and that sign-in for Teams. So compatibility into Teams. So do you want to talk more about that? Or
Yeah, I mean it's pretty straightforward, as he said. So if you're like I am, you want to get your hands on keyboards right away. So you plug the thing in, you get an IP address. By the way, here's something very interesting that I can show you. Each one of these devices will output audio, well, or the speakers anyway, will output audio so that you can hear what the IP address is.
Yeah, so this is really good if you have a technician. You send him off to a site. He's got the silver box, mounts it on the wall. He's like, connects to the network. He's like, what's the IP address? I have no idea.
I forgot where you push.
Oh, reset button.
Oh, just a reset button?
Yeah,
okay.
Just push the reset button on there.
IP
Yeah,
address
there you go.
is 192.
So,
168.
so it'll give you the IP address.
1.
You have to push it again to shut it off, so it's going to drive us crazy. Yeah. So we try to think of convenient things like that. So basically, you can see that we use Teams too. I've got my
calling you.
Teams call coming in here.
Anyway, so once you log in, as you heard Scott say, there is a single radio button you click for Microsoft Teams, and then the device reboots. It already knows the auto provision URL, so it'll automatically grab that on reboot. And when you log in that second time, there'll be a Teams pairing. You go to devices, devicelogin.microsoft.com or whatever that is, enter the pairing code, enter the credentials, and you're up and running. It literally takes less than 5 minutes. And then from a device license side on the Microsoft end, right, depending on what you want it to do, you either need a Teams license or a shared device license or Teams license and phone system license if you're going to assign a phone number to it. So you just pick the level of licensing. It just needs to be a Teams license. And once you've done that, you can do things like peer-to-peer call it. Okay, so I actually started a chat with the 8301. Now, obviously, it didn't respond, but in my Teams client, I now have a history. So I can go to that history for that 8301, and I can click call from my client. I don't actually have to dial a number. It'll do peer-to-peer for me. Or if the number's in the tenant, and everybody knows what's it going to do, RNL, right? So it'll RNL, convert that to a peer-to-peer call so we're not going out over the PSTN. But that option is still there. So from an integration standpoint, it's very simple, very easy. Can get more complex as you add multicast, but from just if all you're getting is an 8301 to integrate with your existing system, super simple, super easy, set up in no time.
I mean, what we find is as customers are migrating over to their legacy infrastructure and they see all the value sets, the phone just keeps ringing, right? Because the product, what happens is the product sells itself. People see it at shows, and then they start calling you with all these different use cases, and we're able to typically address them. And it's very simple. There's no server, there's no software, and they can self-administer and manage the entire system themselves, right? I mean, they basically, to turn up a hospital, for instance, with paging, like we're talking a full-size hospital, like Cali, Florida is one I'm doing right now. The guy's like, how much time? We're putting in 800 speakers, UC Davis, we're putting in 3,500 speakers. How much time do I have to budget? I don't care if you're putting in 10,000 speakers. I'm configuring everything in 18301, and then I'm going to just put everything in multicast. It's going to take you 10 minutes, really, to program the entire system. It's very, very easy, very powerful.
Yes, question? No, you won't need that because the devices auto sign in every time. Once you log them in the first time, you'd still have to go through. You'd either have to use the auto provisioning first to get them into Teams, then you could do that. But they have to be, they've got to be switched to Teams mode first. And I'm sorry, how much time do we have? Because the
clock's not working.
The counter's not working. 30 minutes. Okay, thank you.
So we'll just continue on here. Oh, this isn't working now. All right. Interesting. We're frozen.
Uh-oh. All right, well, so while he's doing that, let me just explain what we have up here. So I've got two phones, just because. I've got a CCX 600 registered as SIP, and you guys can come up and see these a little bit later. I've got an audio code, C470 in Teams mode. They both happen to be sharing the same client, which is fine, it's not a problem. We've got a 70-volt amplifier here, okay, with an analog input. We've got two 8301s. So because we only support signal registration, and because these device auto answer, you have to set it up for either single auto answer or multi-input answer. So we have two, okay, and you'll get a chance to see that. We've got the strobe set up. It is not registered to Teams. It is simply going to listen for multicast, okay, and then that's the same with the rest of these. So I really only have two devices registered into my tenant. All of the rest of these will respond via multicast, and you'll get a chance to see that. So I just wanted you to understand kind of the setup up here.
Yeah. So those are the common scenarios right there, right? So enabling, somebody wants to do a pure IP play, doing a net new building, they want to deploy all IP. Then of course emergency notifications, loud ring. Loud ringing is a big one. Like you're going to go into these places and they're converting over, and they got this old big dusty thing on the wall that's been there since 1940, and they're like, what do I do with that, right? So sometimes it's the audio codes guys, right? It's like if it'll support that, I'll tell them just plug it into the audio codes and away you go. Sometimes not, it has to be replaced, and that's where you can put an IP endpoint in there, and basically we can tie it in with a ring group. We actually build a really cool device that can connect into the headset port of a phone, and we can extend loud ringing out to any of our devices as well. So those are the typical use cases that we have there. And then basically, this is what we've brought with us here. So we basically are live. You've got two phones. You've got the audio codes and the poly that he's got on the desk there. They're registered into your tenant, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Then he's registered the two 8301s into the Teams gateway. The reason there's two, our devices support multiple SIP registration. Like I can take this device and I can register this 50 times into a phone system. Right now there's a limitation on Teams, but that's being addressed, where you'll be able to register these multiple times. So you'd have a page extension, you'd have an emergency notifications extension, a loud ringing extension. You could have a number of extensions. Today, because we're going to do emergency and legacy, we need two devices. But in future firmware, that'll be available. The other thing about our product set, firmware is always made available to you at no charge. You just download it from our site for the life of the product, and there's no ongoing cost with these devices. Once you buy them, you own them, and you're entitled to firmware and support. So what we'll do, and this is very typical. Just I like putting this slide. This is a slide that brings it all home for me. This is an example of what's going on at that airport, right? So I'm doing a single SIP registration to a device, and that device is going to answer, and my voice will come out onto amp 2, because I'm physically connected to it, but I'm also going to multicast onto the network, and I can broadcast all those amps, speakers, and you'll notice RTP. We support Polycom Group Page on our devices. We support, so your Yay links, your audio codes, they can be multicast receivers. So when you get into an environment where they had a North Star system and they were able to page to their phones, well, all of a sudden those phones are going to maybe go away. All of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, do I put a speaker in or do I put a cost-effective phone and turn that into my speaker for paging, right? So these are things that will happen. But without further ado, why don't you go ahead and start doing some stuff.
Yeah. So this was interesting when I was setting it up in my lab. I was able to hook it up to my home network, of course, but I was like, well, this has to be mobile. I'm actually running off a 4G hotspot. So, and it's it's worked every time. Let's hope it does. So for the so in your typical scenario, you've got an analog system, right? And it generally makes some noise, right? Right? Everybody recognize that sound? Anybody? So that's our amplifier. We've got a 70-volt amp, just like you might have in any manufacturing, any loudspeaker system. But we've also got all the rest of this. Now, the first demo I'm going to do, I'm going to call the first 8301. It's going to auto answer, and then I'll just be able to do a standard page. And there we have it. Scott, please call the office.
So you can see he's gone live. It's connected. That's another cool thing about our product set, especially for troubleshooting when you're working with clients. They're like, oh, I can't do paging. I can't do everything. When you log in, there's a status page. So I'm actually logged into the device that he just called, right? And basically, there's a status page that's telling me that it's successfully registered. Here's Microsoft Teams. It's telling you that it's registered into the environment. And there's a whole bunch of other things, that it's getting proper power and so on and so forth.
Now, just to prove a point, Kevin, dial that number, please.
Do you want glasses? Oh, he's got them on.
So this device is registered into my client, and I have actually assigned it the Teams Essential with phone, and then given it an actual number. So this is just one other use case, but we'll make this interactive. All right, well, no demo's perfect, so all right, that's fine.
You didn't test that one.
I didn't test that one. No, I didn't test that one. But, we'd have a little fun with it. Yeah, right. So, all right. So for this next one, we've set the second 8301 up for zone paging. Okay, so you may or may not hear it. What's going to happen is I'm going to dial on this one because the dial pad just comes up right away, so it makes it easier for me. And then I'll DTMF over dial.
Oh, you just did a page. You must have done a just hang up.
So somebody else dialed it. Oh, thank you very much. All right, so it does work. All right, well, that's great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
Somebody had better glasses on or younger eyes. I don't know.
Right.
So you can see that he's got this one registered differently, right? So the other one had a page account registered to it. So now he's calling in. It's answering.
Okay, so I'm going to press 1.
This is a severe weather announcement. All possible severe weather conditions.
Now you'll notice it's coming out of this and this. So this is our analog system, and now we're integrating into IP via multicast, because that device picked that up only via multicast.
So you saw that it was transmitting, and it was transmitting on zone 1. So go ahead and call, I don't know, the other one.
Yep.
Whatever, code blue or. So typically these would you can configure them, and they'll play as long.
Code blue, room 100.
So you can see this one now.
Report immediately to bed number 2.
It's broadcasting on zone 2.
Code blue, room 100. Code blue team, report immediately to bed number 2, room 100.
So you can set these things up. So what he's done, well, what I did just so it wouldn't annoy you and have to wait for him to dial in to cancel it. But if you have somebody triggering an emergency notification, you don't want it to stop until the emergency's over. So that's configurable. You can literally trigger an emergency by calling in from anywhere, and then it'll run until somebody calls in with the proper credentials to cancel the emergency. But for the demo, we're just having them play once.
And 3.
Lockdown. Lock.
Now you can
Light.
see that
Out of sight.
we're broadcasting on
Lockdown.
zone
Light.
3.
Out of sight. Remain in classroom or go to the nearest secure area.
Now, what's interesting is those are canned audio, so you can actually create custom audio and feed it into this and have it play. You don't actually have to have someone on the phone.
Oh, no.
So one of the things we were actually kind of alluding to was with the contact closure, if it is a true emergency and you need everybody to evacuate now, including yourself, you can mash the button on the wall and it'll just run, right? Because of that contact closure. You can set that contact closure up to be that emergency notification.
Or a phone call. You can set
Yeah.
it up to just run.
Or run out and then call in.
Run until it's
And hope you don't
canceled.
have Kevin's phone service.
Yeah, so everything he's doing there for all those emergencies that he triggered, one registration, right? Because he's using DTMF to basically control. So we used to, if you wanted to have a SIP registration independently for each one, you could do that. In Teams right now, you would need multiple devices to do that, but we're going to be doing multiple registration. But to eliminate the number of having multiple licenses, single license, use the DTMF keypad, and then you can trigger up to 10 different emergencies. And we can leverage the multicast channels. We do priority multicast as well. So if somebody was doing a general page, you can basically, when you're doing emergencies, you would typically do all your emergency broadcasts on what we call a priority channel. And it doesn't matter who's paging or what's going on. We're going to override that. We're going to interrupt it. Accessories. There's smart in our accessories. So if you had a volume control and we turn the volume off in the speakers in here and he triggered an emergency, I'll override the mute you've done and play the emergency over the speakers. There's all kinds of logic built into the devices.
That pretty much takes us to the end of the demo portion. Are there any questions? 'Cause we can show you a bunch of other stuff. We can have a little fun with this if you want. You're welcome to come up and try it and see what's going on.
Yeah, on the display device, I know you said you're able to do images. Are you able to do video on that as well?
No, it doesn't do video, not at this time.
Yeah, just to repeat my question,
Yeah.
it was, can the display device
Yeah.
play video?
No, it does not play video. It could, but it doesn't in our firmware at this time. Yeah.
Is that on the roadmap then, or?
I'll just say that we're looking at it. Yeah. But everything we build, it's for a view of the future, right? So the capability for that is there.
So
if you told me you were going to buy 10,000 speakers and you wanted them to be wireless, the capability is there. But these are all fixed wired. Right on. Yeah. Sure. Everybody wants that. So Alyssa's law, which is a law that's going to be becoming the law of the land, right, in the United States, means that anybody can push a button within a school and call 911 and play an emergency message with the notification of where that call was made from, and it has to be done covertly with a hidden button. So, even a relay in a drawer, they open the drawer of their desk, triggers a relay, it'll make the phone call. We're actually building a button right now for a school district that's going to have dual buttons, right? There'll be a green and a red button. The red button will actually have a cover on it. You'll be able to flip that cover up. You push that, you're calling 911. So those are things that are happening today. Which state is it? I think it's the state of Indiana. One of them. I don't know. I talked to so many of them. But at their provincial parks or their state parks, when they go up to the gate, they actually have an intercom there. And when you push that intercom, it calls. When they answer, it's at a PSAP. It rings their PSAP. The local PSAP, it plays the geographical name and location of that device, and then it opens up a two-way communication path with the person. So we can basically do anything you want, anything. Go ahead. Oh.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. I believe you can. Yeah, I believe with the DHCP options we have, but send me an email on that and I'll confirm with you, but I'm pretty sure that you'd be able to set your DHCP options.
The only issue is the pairing code. So
Yeah, but
just
you're
gonna
going
deal
to,
with
like
that.
you are going to need, like you want to get it, it puts it in Teams. Yeah, and then it, correct. That's right. It can be switched to Teams mode. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so did everybody hear the question and the answer? Yeah. Okay. Real quick, we put these on on a lot of the seats. If you don't have one and there's one next to you, just raise it up. I want everyone needs to have this, and I'll explain why in just a minute. So can everybody please grab one of these? There should be scattered throughout, and I'm sure there's some that are not being used. So if you don't have one, make sure everybody gets one. Let's give it just a second. All right, so Algo has been very kind and has offered up 2 bags of swag. Okay, so if you'll look on the back, 2 of you should have handwritten the word winner. So if anybody has that right now, there's one. Okay, come on up. Is this the 83 one? No, this is the speaker one. So, and you? There you go. How are we going to do that? Okay, all right. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100.
All right.
All right. Seriously? You got to be kidding me. That's actually the number I was thinking of. I'm dead serious. All right, there you go. That's where the second one
Oh,
goes.
yeah? Okay. You get my prop.
That is weird. Now you're scared. Stay away from me. All right. Any other
So there's an
questions?
8301 in there.
All right. We've
Yeti
got just a
cup,
couple
bunch
more
of other
minutes
stuff.
before we got to start. Well, we're not going to tear this down just yet. I say we leave it for now. Let that final session run.
sure.
And then if anybody has questions, I'll stick around, or you can stick around and afterwards, and that way we'll leave this set up. So if you want to come see it and work with it a little bit, because it's a hands-on demo, you might want to just see what's going on. We'll leave this set up, but we do have to vacate in a few minutes anyway for the next session. And then if you want to come back, we'll talk more about it before we tear it down. I don't want to tear it down before giving everybody a chance to get to it. Any other questions?
Yeah.
You got a question? Go ahead. Okay.
Mhm. Typically, you want to have them all on the same VLAN, but you can do routing. Like if it's within subnet, within the not over a WAN, but if you're doing, over a LAN. I didn't put my email on there, guys. My apologies. Yeah, my LinkedIn's there. So yeah, I do check my LinkedIn, but I've got cards with me as well. But
So not recommended. So the question was, can you do this
Yeah.
over VLAN?
yeah.
Well,
you can
cross
route it.
VLANs.
You want to
right?
route though. You want to route on. You want to be able to. You have 2 VLANs, right? One that the algos are on, one that your polys are on. Right. So you could do routing over your VLAN within a subnet. I wouldn't recommend trying to do it over your WAN segment, but within a routed environment. So Fort Lauderdale Airport, he's got multiple subnets in the airport. He does routing on all of it. Okay. Okay. Definitely. Oh, great.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And do you have them registered into Teams at this point? Or? So anything that you would have bought, like up until like 2019, it's going to be just an upgrade of firmware, and then boom, you can put them into. So 5.34 is 5.4 is the latest version of firmware, but 5.34, and then you're good to go.
And sales
If
and
you
marketing
have-
got theirs. So okay, that's good to go.
Oh,
So,
that's.
all right. Well, if there are no further questions, we're Scott and Scott. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks.